Let's try a different example. Just one extra idea to think about, and this time we have two different digits in two columns and just the one digit over here. But the processes for all three work the same, just slight variations to take that into account. On the number line, I put in my number line, I'm starting at 1.2 and I'm heading to the right, so I'll start with 1 here. And I'm using an unscaled number line this time. So I'm not going to mark in all of the scales because it gets a bit tiresome and we need to move beyond that eventually. So I'm starting with 1.2, here's my start. I'm going to move to the right by 0.5, so I'm going this way by 0.5, which means I will land, and that's my answer, at 1.7. And so that there is the answer, the final place where we land. If we decide we'd rather use an algorithm, remember to line up your place values. So I'm going to make sure that my decimal places are definitely sitting one above each other. 1.2 plus 0.5, we're adding, and we start at the right as we add, and it works just like whole numbers. So 2 and 5 is 7/10 and 1 whole. Our answer again is 1.7. So that's good when we compare. If we go into fraction form, 1.2 and 0.5, we want to write these with the same denominator. They're both tenths of a type. So 1.2 would be 2/10 here, but the whole is also 10/10. So if we read from the tenths column and back, 1.2 is actually 12/10. And it makes sense that our numerator is bigger than our denominator because we've got more than a whole. 0.5 is simply 5/10. Now we can add them. 12/10 plus 5/10 is equal to 17/10. Now that's not a good way to write our final answer. We should rewrite and simplify with 10/10 as 1 whole and 7/10 left over. And even better practice is to put it back into the form you started with, which is decimals. So there's our 1.7 every time. You may have chosen as an alternative to write 1.2 as 1 and 2/10, and then 0.5 as 5/10. Because the numbers are quite simple, it's pretty straightforward to see that you would have 1 whole and you'd have 7/10. So you could have gotten to 1.7 that way, so long as it's fairly straightforward. But once you start leaving those whole numbers around and the numbers get more complicated, you can make errors. But for this one it works just fine.